The joint attack has also spurred a mix of countering opinions among U.S. lawmakers and political leaders. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear shared a statement writing, quote, generations of Americans are still dealing with long-term impacts of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. The president could have made his case at the State of the Union, but instead played political games. He owes Congress and the American people a full explanation as these actions put American troops at significant risk, end quote. So there are Beshear's words. U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell's public statement reads, quote, the Islamic Republic of Iran made, quote, death to America, death to Israel, a central pillar of its brutal rule. For decades, it wielded violence and repression at home and exported violence and terrorism abroad. You can see the statement there on your screen. McConnell also said that his prayers were with U.S. and Israeli service members, as well as with the people of Iran. Because this is a developing situation, you can read the latest coverage from this military operation and the latest reactions from leaders across Kentucky and Indiana. The source is there on wave3.com and also on the Wave News app.